Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and today I've got a special guest, Toto from HOTSTART, who was so kind to give me a copy of his Challenger and is even kinder by introducing us to it. So we're sitting here together in a shared cockpit environment, and you can see him standing right next to the wing over there, so let's say hello.
Hello.
Alright, so Toto just about started introducing me to the plane and started to show me the walk around when I thought, like, his explanations are so incredibly great, I cannot possibly not share those with you. So for that reason, we're standing here right next to the Challenger. We are setting up for a quick flight from Zadar to Dubrovnik, and we are just about to start with the walk around. So how about we continue exactly like we did in the explanations you offered me before, and we start with a walk around and then get us all the way through the
Sure
flight.
thing. Absolutely. Yeah. So walk around. Typically, we start out, by the left forward section of the nose here, and we just go clockwise around the airplane. Here we have our. Let me see if it actually shows. Yep, that's the um, left angle of attack vane. So we can go ahead and remove that cover. Then we've got the standby pitot probe up there. That is for our standby instruments. Up here, we've got a vibratory at the bottom, a vibratory ice detector. And for those that don't know about how these works, it's basically a tuned oscillator. So this stick thing that is out there, it basically just vibrates at about 40 kilohertz. And if there's any ice buildup that gets on there, that changes the vibration frequency, and that's how the thing knows, hey, I've got ice covered on. So that's when you get the little ding in the cockpit.
Alright, so that's straight back to basic ATPL theory, yeah? I do remember hearing about that like 5 or 6 years ago somewhere.
Yeah, and then there's a warm-up cycle where it tries to shed ice, and so even if you're actually outside of icing conditions, it can take about a minute for it to realize that, hey, I'm outside of icing, because it needs about to go through one or two cycles, basically through the heating cycles, until it concludes that, okay, the ice really is gone. So
Alright.
there's some gotchas there.
And all of that stuff is actually simulated in your
Oh
aircraft?
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Icing will
Wow.
have an effect on the airplane, as Challenger is quite well known for being very unforgiving of icing. You know how they tell you on like an Airbus that, well, you're not supposed to be flying, without anti-icing procedures, but even if the airplane's a little bit iced up, it's no big deal. The Challenger is the exact opposite. This is the thing that's going to kill you if you have any frost on the ice, on the wings.
Wow, really?
Yes, they've had a fair amount of issues over the years. One famous one is from 2004 in Birmingham, where basically they had a little bit of transparent frost on the wings. The crew didn't think it was a big deal, and well, they flipped the airplane over on takeoff as soon as they got out of ground effect. And you can imagine what the outcome of that then was.
Wow. Well, so we'll better make sure that detector's working right, huh?
Oh yeah, and we've also got de-icing procedures simulated and everything, all of that.
Okay.
So up above that, we have our pilot side pitot static probe. So this thing, once we remove the cover, this thing has both a pitot probe at the tip, and at the back there's a little hole for the static port. Getting up forward of the airplane here, then we walk around back. Normally this nose door compartment here is left open for ground crew for maintenance access after we land, but it can be closed, and obviously it is closed in flight.
Okay,
Walking
so
in there,
so the
we have
nose
a bunch
door
of,
basically is the door that we would call, well, the nose gear bay door or something of the likes in airliners,
yes,
right? So the one we got on the right and on the left over here.
yes.
Okay, cool.
Normally it automatically closes when the nose gear is deployed, so it's not like a 737 where it stays open. It's more like an A320. But we manually leave this door open for ground maintenance access after we arrive. In there, we've got on the left-hand wall of the nose compartment, we've got the brake accumulator gauges that tell us if there's any residual pressure in the brake accumulators. And then we've also got three major items in there that are the three gear pins. Rather than at the very back, we've got the nose gear pin. So if you don't take that out, the nose gear will not retract. Kind of an important thing to have installed when you're trying to tow the airplane, because you don't want to have a nose gear collapse if you're pushing and pulling on that nose gear.
Oh yeah.
Generally a bad day. Forward of that, we've got the nose door pin. So if that is usually used by ground maintenance personnel in case they're up in here, they don't want the nose door to suddenly close on them. That'll be a very bad day for them. So the door is pinned open so that there's absolutely no chance of somebody accidentally pressurizing hydraulics and crushing somebody in here. So you can remove that pin as well.
All right.
And forward of that, we've got the air-driven generator pin, ADG pin. That's the ram air turbine, which is actually just on the other side of that wall. It falls out near the nose door compartment on the right-hand side of the aircraft if we have a complete loss of electrical power in flight.
Okay.
The Challenger has no manual reversion of anything of any kind for flight control, so it needs hydraulic power. It needs at least a little bit of electrical power.
All right. So it's full fly-by-wire.
It's not fly-by-wire. No. It's still conventional sort of cable and yoke, but it has no mechanical reversion. So if it loses hydraulic power on all three systems, it loses all flight controls.
Okay.
So you absolutely do not want to have that happen. And that air-driven generator is able to provide us electrical power in flight down to about 120 knots.
Okay, so that's the little box down here, I suppose, where it's gonna come out.
The air-driven generator falls out. It's a little bit difficult to see, but where it says "Danger, keep away," the little flag.
Ah, that one over here.
Yeah,
okay.
there's a door. It's
Yeah.
quite flush with the nose compartment with the wall, but it does actually come out there. I can actually, we shouldn't be doing this for normal walkarounds, but I can show you what it looks like when it falls out because I can just go ahead and pull the air-driven generator deploy handle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's what it looks like.
Wow.
And this would be a bad day because now we'd have to call maintenance to go ahead and restow the air-driven generator for us. It needs to be aligned and pinned and checked and all that good stuff. So, and it does rotate in flight. The angle of attack of the blades actually changes to adapt to flight conditions and air and all that speed. All of that is physically simulated. So I'm just going to go into ground services on my main menu, and there's a restow air-driven generator button so that it gets pulled back in.
All right. That's quite cool that you feature all these little things on that aircraft. I mean, I've never really seen a business jet that detailed yet in any of the simulations I've flown before.
Mm-hmm. And so, actually, in version 1.8, you can even open the forward equipment bays here and the radome as well. There's actually a forward main battery in there, which you can disconnect and a bunch of breaker boxes you can play around with. A whole bunch of stuff. Even in this version, you can already have a look at the oxygen servicing point.
Okay.
So we've got our backup oxygen gauge, I guess. This is for filling and servicing the oxygen tank. The Challenger doesn't have a chemical oxygen system. It's only a tank.
Okay.
So that is that it serves both crew and passengers. There's not so many passengers that would be a problem.
Yeah, true that.
Its maximum occupancy, I think, on the aircraft is 19 people or thereabouts.
Yeah, okay, that's not too many. And thinking back to it, let's call it oxygen tank in the plane is what you have for most airliners as well, but just for the flight crew and not for the cabin. But with that amount of passengers, I suppose it absolutely makes sense.
Yes. Just to the side of the nose door compartment, we've got the external AC power attachment door. Right now, there's an AC plug for the AC ground power unit plugged in. Inside of that compartment, you might be able to see there's a little switch there. That is actually for lifting up the nose door when the hydraulics are pressurized.
Oh, and okay.
So it should now be set down to open. Yep. We're on the ground, and once we pressurize the hydraulics, as soon as that switch comes up, that nose door is going to close no matter what. So keep your hands clear.
So that's like 3,000 psi from the hydraulic system then, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yep, that sounds familiar.
People have been known to lose fingers. So then we've got up above that, we've got our co-pilot pedostatic, co-pilot ice detector. right side AOA vane, and up above that, the spike thing is the aux AOA, and that's actually the AOA that's shown to the pilots. The left and right vane AOA is only used by the stall protection system.
Ah, okay.
And at the very top, we've got our total air temperature probe, non-aspirated, so if you leave the probe heats on, it will actually show a very weird number. It might even go dashed where it goes off range, out of scale.
Yeah, pretty similar to what we had on the 737, even though on the 73 it's a company option to have a non-aspirated probe, which is, by the way, what you see modeled in the PMDG, for example. So in the PMDG, you won't see the numbers going up, but in the aircraft that I flew, we regularly saw the numbers go up to like 99 degrees centigrade once we started the engines, because that was when the auto probe heat logic started to turn the thing on.
Oh yeah.
So,
And
same thing in here then.
yes, exactly. And you will see this in the simulation here as well. In fact, it's one of the reasons why you're not supposed to use the TAT probe on the ground for estimating what the temperature is outside, because
Okay.
it might be showing completely bogus numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we have, so we've got our ice light, or the wing illumination light in the little hole. Then below that, we've got, let me open that up. Here we've got the pressure refueling port. I'm going to go ahead and call the guy for the fueler to come in and hook up. So this is where your pressure refueling hose would connect. Taxi and landing light. Below that, we've got a simulation. Normally, the aircraft comes with halogen bulbs from the factory still, but we've got a simulation of the retrofit for the what they call the boom beams, the HID retrofit. It's the high intensity discharge, the xenon lamps. At the top above the wing, we've got our external refuel defuel panel. That is normally, most companies don't want the fuelers to use this because it doesn't show fuel quantities. So they instead they'll cover it up, put a little placard on there that says, "Don't touch this, Mr. Fueler. Just hook up the hose, and we'll control it from the cockpit."
I suppose with a variety of business jets available, that's probably... The fuelers just can't know it all, can they?
Yes, each one has slightly different requirements. The Challenger is very quirky. When we get to the fueling part, you're gonna have a laugh about how crazy this fuel system was designed, because it's an airplane that was designed in the 70s, and it kind of shows that some decisions are just making you scratch your head. It's like, what the hell were they thinking doing that?
Well, I flew plane designed in the 60s, so I'm not going to comment on that.
Yep. So the entire forward section of the wing here, the shiny silvery part, that's a hot wing for anti-icing.
Yep.
And actually, one more thing I want to do here while I check down here, we'll want to go ahead and remove the ground, the main gear pin. That locks the actuator from retracting, so we'll click on that and remove it. Do we have the nose chock in? Yes, we do. So I'm going to remove the main chocks now. With the nose chock in, we're not going to move. But otherwise, if I'd removed all chocks, yeah, the airplane might very well move on us without the hydraulics and the brakes on, so be careful about that.
Okay.
In fact, below here, you can see the little holes on the bottom of the wing here. That's where the bleed air comes out of. So there's what they call a piccolo tube that runs inside of this. Little holes that are drilled and blowing hot air on the forward leading section from the inside of the silver part. And then once the air is used up and cooled off, then it basically blows out of here in flight.
Okay. So, kind of pneumatic wing anti-icing then, just like
Yes,
we'd
exactly.
see on most jets, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Just don't turn it on while you have anti-icing fluid on there, because you'll cook the fluid. I've heard funny stories of people burning green stuff onto the wing.
Oh yeah, been there, done that. So that's actually modeled, is it?
We don't simulate the burning part, but yes, we do simulate the anti-icing fluid being on the wing. So don't do that. The Challenger is kind of a weird intermediate in terms of refueling, in that they still felt the need to include the option for overwing refueling, so non-pressure. Most operators, and we do not simulate this, most operators don't use this, but theoretically, if you opened up this cap, you could literally just put a little hose in there and just pour fuel into the wing. You are not going to be able to fill the airplane up all the way, but it is an option if you come to a low-tech airport, small GA airport that doesn't have a pressure refueling truck. That is one way to basically just get a little bit of fuel in the airplane and fly away to some place where you can actually get pressure refueling.
So that's basically where I'd take away the fuel for my car for the way home then, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That'll be
Has,
a bit weird, but I suppose.
has anybody ever tried flying a Challenger on diesel rather than Jet A1? Heard some rumors that
Uh,
it works. At least
it
for a short period of time until the engines start failing on you.
so jet fuel and diesel are very similar. Chemically, they're almost the same thing. Jet fuel is just refined to have less water. Um, so technically, yes, the engines will run fine on diesel. In fact, if we look, I don't know if you have no, you don't have the same scenery, but in the background behind the aircraft here we have the King Air. But a King Air, with its Pratt & Whitney PT6 engines, PT6s are actually allowed to fly on avgas, aviation gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
They're normally jet fuel only, but if you are in a pinch, you are able to fly them for a few hundred hours on avgas to just basically get away from where you are and put something normal in there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's some funny operational stuff that you can get into. But yeah, from here we can actually also see inside of the engine. The standard, the F-34 engine, high bypass. Also hot cowling, so that's the silver part again. So it does have engine anti-ice as well as wing anti-ice. Right,
Mm-hmm.
walking over out to the right wing tip. Um, Challengers from about the CL601 series. Well, actually, CL604 from 1995 have the winglets installed. Before that, it didn't have winglets, and we have dual nav lights. So the system it's not like on an Airbus where you have two separate switches for them. When you turn it on, it's both come on at the same time, but you have the ability to fly nighttime if you have one of them burned out. So just a redundancy for nighttime flying.
Yeah, sounds quite familiar. Same thing in some 3 there. I
Exactly.
mean, it just makes sense, doesn't it? How reliable are those light bulbs in the Challenger? Do they also go out like after every positive landing you do, like they do in the 7.3?
Uh, Not quite. I think they started fitting LEDs for those now, but um, yeah, I'd imagine that was the motivation for having dual redundancies there. For this, the MEL for the Challenger is a mile long. So yes, you are able to fly the airplane with quite a bit of broken stuff on there, and we do simulate things like have the ability to do ground air starts and that kind of stuff if you have an inoperable APU. In fact, one of the weird things I'm going to get back here, if we come back to the airplane's tail here we have currently not simulated the waste and water system, but back here we've got another power plug. You might ask yourself, well, what the hell is that? It looks like a DC power plug, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's 28 volt DC, but the airplane is primarily an AC aircraft. And so what this is only for, it's just to replace effectively the APU battery. In case you have a dead battery, you're able to start the APU on external DC power. And that's also simulated.
Wow,
So,
that's so. Is it technically possible to even connect the AC power when the battery is dead?
yes, absolutely.
I mean, without the external DC power unit. I mean now.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, in fact, you're currently set to the guest on the shared cockpit, so you can't browse the study menus at the top. But you would be able to see that you can literally disconnect both APU and the main battery in the front. The APU battery is over here in the back. And you would be able to power up the airplane just on AC power externally. The reason for that is you might think, like, well, how does that work, right? How do the
Yep.
electronics power up? And if you looked at an AC power plug, you'll see that it's got 6 pins. 4 of them are fairly thick ones and 2 little ones. The 4 thick ones are ground and plus 3 phases, and the 2 little ones are actually 28 volt DC. So yes, a AC power plug on an aircraft actually supplies a little bit of DC just to run the electronics in the aircraft. It's
Oh.
not it's not high power DC, so this plug here can take 1,000 amps. The AC plug, the DC lines do not support that, but they give you enough power to run the AC power controller and some basic electronics inside of the aircraft to get the airplane sort of from a completely dead state.
Okay. Wow. You always learn something new. I didn't know that before.
Yep. Up above that, we've got the APU exhaust. So when the APU is running, watch your hair, because we're going to have 400-degree air coming out of here. Might give you a nice tan.
I suppose the rich guys aren't that happy if you come over as a skinhead, huh?
Generally, yeah. Well, especially you're going to be sooty and burned head, so not great fun.
Yeah.
Up above that, we've got our engine, looking for any drips and oil leakages or anything. At the forward section here, you know what that is? That ripped part with holes in it.
I did know about it in some point during my ATPL theory, yeah, but that stuff got a little bit rusty. If you might want to help me there.
Yeah, that's very similar to the holes on the leading edge of the wing. That's where the hot air comes out of when you have the engine anti-ice on. So again, the anti-ice air is used on the silvery part to heat up, and then once it's used up, it basically blows out of here.
Okay.
So that's and also right above that, you'll see there's a little plug. That is an overpressure vent. So if that plug is sort of ejected out, that means you've had a blocked tube coming from the engine's compressor to the forward section of the cowl anti-ice, and there's been an overpressure, and basically that popped out the vent, so you have an inoperative engine anti-ice at that point.
Wow.
Clogged tube, basically. That's the problem.
Okay, yeah.
Cool. Split cowl reverser. There's some service points, clasps that you would open if you wanted to get up in there. We do not simulate that. We don't simulate maintenance actions because you need a ladder and a whole bunch of equipment and 2 people to get anything done in there. But you get the idea.
Oh, yeah.
Then we've got the whole silvery part is the hot part of the engine, so, don't touch. Coming back. Let's go all the way back to the items that are of interest to the crew. So we've got a T-tail, conventional T-tail. We've got at the top, we've got a nav light, and there's also another nav light at the lower portion of the tail, like the body part of the tail. This is actually dual white lights at the back as well. Even though it looks like it's silvery on this part of the horizontal and vertical stabilizer at the leading edge, those are not actually heated. So the hot air only goes to the main wing. It doesn't go to the stabilizers. These do not require anti-icing in flight.
Okay. So is that just some sort of protection for the structure in case a bird strikes and stuff like that?
Yes, exactly. It's just reinforced structure.
Okay. So we've got these little things up there just above the Canadian flag. Would you explain what those are for?
Those be your VOR antennas. So that'll be VOR antenna. I forget which one is which, but it should be VOR 1 and VOR 2.
All right.
At the back here, the little spout that comes off the tail, that is a tail tank dump system. Because the Challenger has a tail tank which sits right about where the rudder is, roughly in line where the line comes back down through the fuselage, and it's also going a little bit forward. This tail tank is so far after the center of gravity, in case you have a problem with the tail tank transfer, forward to the belly of the aircraft, you could actually get into an aft C of G condition if you had a failure to transfer, then you could end up very tail heavy, and that's aerodynamically unstable. Yep. So in that case, you are supposed to dump out the fuel, and it'll come out here of this little spout.
Okay. So when you're talking about aerodynamically unstable and seeing that the Challenger's got a T-tail, does it have any such flight characteristics that it is prone to deep stall and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, it can, and it will. I think it'll actually spin before it'll go into deep stall, but it will spin quite happily on you.
Okay. I suppose there's a little line somewhere along the flight manuals. No intentional spins allowed.
Yes, and no intentional deep stalls allowed either. In fact, the aircraft is the mere fact that we have got a stick pusher installed should tell you about how prone to deep stalls it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it will actually yank the yoke forward from your hands if you get too close to the danger zone. Cool.
Okay, perfect. That's for those of you who aren't that familiar with it. The stick pusher really is a device. You find it in aircrafts like the Dash 8 or the CRJs or the Challenger, and it's mostly aircraft that have a T-tail that are prone to it. And basically, it's the last line of defense after the stick shaker in order to prevent the airplane from going into the stall, because it can be very, very hard to get it back out again. And for that reason, you've got that additional stall protection device fitted to a lot of those aircraft. Typically T-tailed aircraft. Not exclusively, but typically.
Yeah, the 727, I think -100 also had an option for a stick pusher installed. Some regulators, I think the UK Civil Aviation Administration required it to be installed in some models of the 727 because that thing was so prone to deep stalls that nobody ever wanted to go anywhere near it.
No, I can well imagine.
Yep. Up above, we've got our ELT antenna on this side, and just after that, we've got the right pack exhaust port, and there's another corresponding exhaust port on the other side for the left pack. The pack inlet is actually in the base of the vertical stabilizer, so where the
Okay.
vertical stabilizer sort of extends forward, yeah, that's where the pack inlets are,
All right.
for cooling of the pack.
And the pack outlets, are they basically replacing an outflow valve on the airplane, or how does the system work?
No. So that's for the cooling air into the pack. So the pack takes compressor discharge air from the engines, but in order to cool it, it uses sort of this external blow-by air through a set of heat exchangers to regulate the temperature that goes into the cabin. Otherwise, you'd be blowing like 300-degree air into the cabin.
Oh, yeah. Sounds quite familiar. So we have the same thing on the 737, for example. You can see
Yes.
the ram air doors just in the front of the wing on the 737, just to give you guys an idea of what kind of stuff this is for.
Yes. So back here we've got, I keep forgetting the names of these antennas. Back here, I think, good question. One of these is a marker antenna. Then forward here, this set of two pairs of black squares, that would be your radio altimeters. So that's transmit, receive, or yes, transmit, receive,
Yep.
transmit, receive. This door-looking thing around it that we want to eventually make that openable, that's your aft equipment bay. You can actually get in there as a pilot, and you are expected to perform engine oil service from here. There's a central oil servicing system.
Okay.
Because on a business jet, you are typically your first line of service and maintenance support, the pilots themselves. Because when you're away away from a country or in a foreign country, and your entire flight department is consisting of like 5 people, you are your own first line of service and maintenance support. So there's actually an oil tank in here that allows you to centrally service the oil tanks in the engines without you having to climb up there and start, pouring castor oil in there.
Okay.
That'll be a bit weird. And
Yeah.
the two weird sort of plate-looking things here. You know what those are?
Well,
That-
I could take a couple guesses, but it has to be something related to aerodynamics, seeing that they are plates. But I would possibly go into.
Well, the shape is mostly for helping the aerodynamics, but the antennas are actually VHF data link. Well, specifically VHF Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So these things there's a service provider called GoGo Wi-Fi, and the airplane that we modeled this based off of used GoGo Wi-Fi service. So these two are actually providing in-flight internet.
Okay, wow. So why are they located at the bottom of the airplane, not the top? Because that's where I would normally expect.
It's because it's ground-based terrestrial Wi-Fi, not satellite. We do have a satellite antenna in the top of the tail, but these are faster and cheaper.
Okay. Now that's
So
a system. Haven't heard of anything the likes before.
it's pretty common in business aviation that you have more than one data service provider, because the customers here very much value being connected in flight, and they're willing to pay for the extra. So this is how you provide Wi-Fi service when you're over land and you're within, VHF coverage.
Mm-hmm.
It's faster, much better than satellite internet. And then if you're outside over the ocean, then your satellite internet unit automatically takes over, and you have like, I don't know, maybe half a megabit, enough to do like a video conference, but you can't really watch Netflix on there.
Yeah, I suppose 4K streaming is a little bit too much, is it?
Or for satellite, probably. But I know Inmarsat are rolling out the GX series of satellites for a Ka band and Ku band service, so that's actually already hundreds of megabits.
Mm-hmm. So what's that
Cool.
little antenna that runs over here? Is that the localizer?
I think that's. I forgot. I'd have to look at the manual. It's either the marker or yeah, I think it might be the marker antenna. I'd have to look, to be honest.
Okay. So finally I found something on that airplane that you couldn't answer straight away.
I always get these in the back here mixed up because there's just so many of them, and I don't really need to touch them too often.
I feel you. I totally feel you. It took me a
Cool.
little while on the 737 as well until I've finally been able to figure it out.
APU panels have explained. Here's where the external unit attaches for the external air. So if I can show you again, yeah, that's what it looks like. And there's even a procedure for backfeeding out of here to start another Challenger through external air. Challenger to Challenger starts, but it is so rarely used that almost nobody ever does it.
Wow, so that's like with cars where you can just hook a
Yes.
battery up to another. And you can do
Yes.
that with airplanes. Wow.
Yes, it's a very strange procedure. Almost nobody ever does that, but technically it is possible. And
Okay.
there's even an hour meter for the APU, and yes, it does work. It does spin turnover.
So everybody can now see that on this particular airframe. I haven't flown it at all yet.
Yes, it's a new airframe that I think I've created.
Okay.
Cool. So we can go ahead and close and latch that. Here we have, forward to that is the cargo compartment door. That is currently non-modeled, but we're working on adding that in, so you get to have the fun of slinging bags in there.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a hydraulic pump service point, normally not accessible by the pilots, so we'll skip through that. Your standard flaps, flap tracks, no main landing gear. You can inspect your brakes, your tread, and wear, and everything.
So does it also have those little brake wear pins like most airliners do? Or
I think it does, yeah, but I don't think we simulate brake wear. Currently, we don't simulate like persistent wear over time. It wasn't considered sort of important for training purposes, but yes,
okay.
in reality, it does have that. Left aileron, standard stuff, left winglet, dual nav lights, and our strobe discharge. And coming on forward, we are back at the door. Left landing light and taxi light, and then the wing light. And yeah, we can hop on inside of the aircraft, get going.
Alright, so let's get going then. But that's going to be a topic for a separate video. So at this point, I would already like to say thank you very, very much for those great explanations. I do hope that all of you guys watching this actually liked them and enjoyed that, well, probably most detailed walkaround of any airplane in any flight simulator at the moment. Most certainly the most detailed outside model that I've seen so far of an aircraft of this complexity. So I'm very much looking forward to going into the flight, but now it's your turn, guys. Do let us know in the comments below the video what you think on it, and do let us know if there is anything still left that you think we haven't covered. I'm sure there's going to be something, and I'm sure at the moment where I'm saying this, Toto is even going to think like, oh yeah, I could go on 4 hours about this, and I totally have the feeling he could. But I suppose let's get in and let's do what the airplane is actually built to do. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do absolutely hope that you have enjoyed this one. Subscribe to the channel for more, and then I see you all again on the next one where we'll take the aircraft flying.